Hey guys, today I'm gonna show you our new project file. It's a Mr. Carmack style trap project file. As usual, I will play you guys the track first. Timestamps are in the description with the whole table of contents of this video. And if you're wondering about the colors of this project file, these rainbow colors, that's because I think the track sounds very happy. So anyways, here's the track. If you still need motivation to buy the project file, bear in mind that I'm not going to go through everything. I'm not going to go through details such as the mastering chain or mixing or all the effect chains on the tracks. I'll just go through some interesting things. If you buy the project file, you get these descriptions in the info view in this box in the lower left corner. If you hover your mouse over the tracks, you get these descriptions. And I think I included a lot of useful tips in there. By the way, this project file is made for Ableton Suite and Serum only. You don't have to have anything else. Anyways, let's start the tutorial with the lead, because I think it's the most important element of this track. This lead is of course layered, because the best way to achieve original sounds is by layering it with 10 other things. This sound consists of 4 layers. There's 3 layers of strings and 1 layer of a trumpet kind of instrument. So these strings are all EQ'd differently, and the brass is also EQ'd. It doesn't have much high end, and I'm cutting on the lows Here are the layers. By layering these different instruments, we get new instruments, like something between a strings instrument and a brass kind of trumpet. There's a few effects on it, like reverb, more EQ, some glue compression to even out volumes, cabinet. The reason why cabinet was created is to model recording an amp with a microphone. And that's because back in the day, they used to only record guitars through amps and microphones. They used to put the microphone next to an amp. This was meant to work with the amp effect, but I just sometimes use it to get a different feel. Makes the sound mono, changes the sound a little bit. I'm using the vocoder here. I'm using this modulator setting. You can process sounds in a creative way through vocoder using these settings. For more info on that, check out our video on 10 audio effect tracks. Anyways, guys, let's take a look at our bass now. I really like this bass, and in fact it's a single sine wave in Serum with some distortion on it. I'm using my technique of saturating things on bass, and that is I distort things with, for example, a dynamic tube or overdrive or saturators. Then I cut the high end and I just leave the bass frequencies, and I think they sound very tight thanks to this. The EQ sounds huge now. Sounds like a really tight bass. And I'm doing this a couple of times with overdrive, then EQ once again to get a different feel for the bass. Then I'm making it mono. With the frequency shifter, I'm just pitching it down gradually so that it's not so boring. Then I'm using limiting to even out volumes, boosting some bass frequencies and sidechaining it to the kick and the snare to give our kick and snare more space in the mix. Let's take a look at our chord progression because I think it's interesting. Now for chords in trap music, you want them to sound creepy, as if you're sneaking up on someone and you're gonna stab them in a second. It actually sounded weird. This chord progression is written in B minor, and all these chords belong to the B minor scale. So it's all these notes. But the first chord doesn't belong to the B natural scale. It's actually from another scale, which is called the harmonic minor scale. And the reason for that is that this chord creates a lot of tension between this chord and this chord. This is the root chord. You can create the harmonic scale by taking the 7th note of the scale and pitching it one semitone up. You can see that here we have a triad and this is an octave up from the root. It's actually an A sharp minor flat 5 chord, because this would be the normal minor chord and this is the flat. But anyways, this is just a chord from the harmonic minor scale. I'll show you on my keyboard what this scale sounds like. I'm gonna play the A minor harmonic scale. Can you hear that weird kind of Arabic vibe of the ending of the scale? The reason why that sounds so cool is that this 7th note is very close to the last note of the scale, and that creates a lot of tension between them too. And this chord really wants to resolve to this chord because it's so close to the root. The rest of the chords belong to this B natural scale, and it's all these notes, and they are built with this technique. You can use it that you take one note, skip one note of the scale, use the 3rd note, skip another note, use the 5th note. This is this chord, for example. And then you can double the first note at the top. Or, for example, in this chord, they skipped another note and added the seventh. Or you can invert things, so take a few notes and put them an octave up, or you can double some notes. You can see that these notes are not far apart. Most of these chords at the end are inverted, and that's how this consistent feel of the chord progression is created. For more info, there's all the chords in info view, so you can check that in the project file. Now let's take a look at some effects on this track, because I think the effects are a big part of the whole sound. First of all, there's this nice pitch down kind of DJ backspin kind of effect. This effect is created by resampling the lead here, and then I went into the clip and turned on clip transposition modulation. I drew in this transposition curve. I'm layering it with a synth that is actually this synth resampled and reversed. So let's get inside the synth. This is a sine wave, sounds like this. And reversed sounds like this. This resonance on the filter adds a lot of that weird feel to it. The note is mapped to the cutoff and the drive and cutoff of the last filter. We are actually using portamento here, gliding between two notes, and that's how this effect is created. So the higher the note, the higher the cutoff here, the higher the drive and the low pass filter. And then I'm EQing it slightly, stereo enhancing it. Let's take a look at this nice effect. This effect is also a sine wave with distortion on it. And I'm using dynamic tube and EQ, automating the drive of the dynamic tube. And I'm repeating this a couple of times with an overdrive and with EQ8 and overdrive once again. I'm also automating the drive here to give this wobble a bit more movement, then using reverb and stereo enhancing it. And decking the volume with utility when the kick hit, for more control of over the curve of the volume decking instead of throwing a sidechain compressor. Carmack was probably trying to make dubstep, but he's not a dubstep producer, so he ended up using a couple of wobbles here and there. But I think it sounds really nice with the bass. These wobbles are nice to use before the bass hits. Okay, some other effects that I made in here. Let's take a look at the Stomp and Gunshot. The more gunshots you add in a trap track, the better it's gonna be. So I added this really nice stomp sample, distorted it a bit. And then this gunshot, I didn't like the way it sounded first. So I ended up processing it through vocoder twice with the modulator setting. And I'm using a different format setting for both of these. Now there's a cool gunshot that I made here. It sounds a bit more digital. This is also a sine wave in Serum, but it's got also another sine wave here. I used this thing to add noise here. And I'm modulating this oscillator A with oscillator B, so I'm using the FM synthesis from B, and that's distorting it a lot. Then I'm using the resonance here with the envelope mapped to the cutoff, and that gives it that feel, that resonant feel. Then I'm using vocoder to give it a bit different feel. Then I resampled it and pitched it a few semitones down for more low end. Yeah, that's how I created this effect. Now let's take a look at the bass stab and sweep sound here. Okay, so this bright stab thing, this is a sine wave as well, and another sine wave, but I used this noise kind of setting again. But this time I just added the noise slightly. Then I'm stereo enhancing it with hyper and dimension, actually hyper only, distorting it, filtering it through the reverb filter. And that sounds really crazy. The reverb filter If you apply it correctly, it can make sound very modern. And then on the bass, there's also the reverb filter, and it's actually just a single sine wave with mono and portamento. A bit of mid-side EQing, slight stereo enhancing. Here with the audio effect track, I did something cool. I added a different setting of Redux onto each chain, and I panned it differently to achieve more stereo width. There's some other wobbles as well, for example this thing. And this was created by resampling this instrument. This is a sine wave. This is something I think between a saw wave and a sine wave. I'm using the reverb filter here. Grain delay for a weird effect. This, if you automate this pitch thing and grain delay, it gives you can make all sorts of weird sounds. Now, I resampled it onto this track and reversed the left and right signals by selecting left, panning it to the right, selecting right, panning it to the left. I warped it a bit differently and pitched it down a few semitones with transposition modulation, and used the beat setting because it surprisingly sounded better set to beats. Let's take a look at the piano outro, because there's some crazy piano lines playing at the end of the track. So this line, this is crazy. I had to create it manually. I'm not sure if there's a way to create something like this automatically. And then I click Command and B and drew in this volume curve to make it sound more interesting. I'll show you another trick that we used here. And it's actually in Sampler. And it's on this cool sound. By default, it sounded like this. But then I imported it into the sampler device. By the way, if you right click, and you can convert sampler to simpler and vice versa. And then I went to pitch oscillator tab and selected the type sine 8 type. I think it's FM modulation. And you can increase the volume of this thing. And that gives you a really nice kind of Redux effect, but it's a bit different. Now, for another creative effect, we used the grain delay, and we used it on hi-hats here. So you can see that we are automating the pitch and also the dry wet here. If you have feedback all the way down, you're not creating any delay. But with the pitch, you can pitch sounds nicely with this grain delay. If we're talking about grain delay, I'll show you something else. Actually, I have it on a riser effect. So here's this riser without the grain delay. And with the grain delay, I think it adds very nice movement to the sound, and it's the Tabby preset from Ableton. You can find it in the browser. I'll show you another synth. And let's go to the first layer. It's a saw wave imported from Silent One, actually. And what I did is edited it. I drew in these shapes to give this saw wave a bit more modern feel. Then I'm doing the same thing with the same synth, one octave down. I think they make a cool sound together. And as for the arrangement of this track, I think it's interesting because you sometimes get these repeated hits of the kick, for example here. That kind of, I think, adds a bit of a glitchy effect But it's nice to sometimes repeat a sample more times before, for example, a bass drop. And some effects, when they appear, there's almost nothing but the effects. For example, here. And that kind of surprises you in the middle of a drop. I think it's nice. And for this wobble, actually, I used the same technique as for the other wobble I showed you. It was hard for me to achieve the right LFO rate with manual automation, so I said, let's resample it, freeze and flatten it, and warp it manually here so that it plays in time in sync with the track. Okay, thanks for watching this tutorial. Remember, you can grab this template on our website. If you'd like to learn more about making music in Ableton, whether you're a beginner or a more advanced producer, you can check out my Skype lessons. I do one-on-one sessions through Skype. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. See you in the next videos.